The second freehand masking technique is called blending. And that means that we're going to take an adjustment layer and use the trick with the low flow value that I've shown you before, and use that to really smoothly blend in the adjustment on those areas where we would like to have it. Now, in order to use this technique, or let me first start with what I'm trying to achieve here. We've lightened this area of the door, but the door itself is still very dark. And if I am increasing this effect that we put on the door, you can see that the outside of the door gets unnaturally bright, so I don't want that really, but it doesn't really affect the door itself. Now what I'm going to do to change this is I'm going to add another adjustment layer, and I'm going to just increase that, the brightness of that layer here, until we get to a level where the details in the door come out really nicely, which was still too dark before. But now, of course, the rest of the image is hopelessly overexposed, and we have to limit that adjustment to the door only. And I'm going to do this first by inverting that mask. And now I'm using the blending technique. And this blending technique works as follows. We're going to set a very low flow value here. We're going to go as low as 5%. And that means that we have to brush very often over the same area in order to make it really white in our case. Because we're going to paint with white on that black layer mask to let the effect come through gradually and to take control of how much that effect really comes through. So I'm going to switch fore and background colors here, and I'm going to make the brush much smaller and very soft. So let me bring up the brush preset picker here to show you. So I've set the hardness to 0%. I want a very, very soft brush for this technique. So we have the flow value set to a very low value so that we have to brush often. And we have very fine-grained control over how bright the areas in the mask will become that we're brushing on. And we use a very, very soft brush to get nice, smooth transitions for this technique. Okay, so I'm going to make my brush a bit smaller here. I'm going to start painting on that door, and you can see that those details start coming out really nicely. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger here. And you see that this low flow value allows me to really, really control how much of the effect comes through in which areas. Let me just undo this and show you what would happen if I have a flow of 100%. In that case, you apply the entire effect the first time you brush over the area, so it doesn't really give you any control. Only if you have a flow value of a very low flow value, about 5% in this case, you can use those brush strokes to really model those areas where the effect should be coming through. Now you've seen how I've applied the adjustment underneath that layer mask gradually with the brush. And you may also have seen that by doing this, I've actually applied some of the effect to the edge of that door, which I really didn't intend to do. But since we had a very soft brush here, some of the white paint on that layer mask spilled outside the door area. And so we also brightened some of the outside here, actually quite a considerable amount of that outside. Now, and this is where another technique comes in which you are painting through an active selection. You could call that constraint masking, if you will. And the way we're going to do this, let me first get rid of that mask that we've created here. The way we're going to do this is we're going to create a selection first. So I'm going to pick the quick selection tool here. Going to make it a bit bigger, so you can also apply this Alt right mouse button trick to the quick selection tool, and actually to any tool which comes with a brush tip. I'm going to make that even smaller here. I'm going to try to select only the inside of the door. And you already know how this works. So by holding down the Alt key, I'm going to subtract parts of that selection until we only have the inside of the door. Photoshop is going to try to refine those edges a little bit. For now, that's okay. I don't need to refine that any further. And now we have the marching ants. And what that actually means is that anything that I paint on the layer mask now is going to be confined to that area. Nothing of it is going to be applied outside that area. Now, let me show you that. So I'm going to switch to the mask view. I'm going to pick the brush tool here with a nice soft big brush, and I'm going to paint over that area. And you see the paint is only going to be applied to the inside of the selection, to all the pixels that are selected here. Now, let me undo this. If the marching ants distract you, which is easily the case because you don't really see the edges of the area that you're painting on, you can go to View and click on Extras to hide those marching ants. Now the selection is still active, but only the marching ants are hidden. Let me show you again. Going to the mask view. And if I paint, the same thing happens. So we still have an active selection. Only the marching ants are not shown. And now I can use my brush here to really brush on those areas. I don't have to worry about the paint spilling outside the door. I can make my brush smaller to really lighten up those areas at the outside here and bring out all those details really nicely without affecting any of the brickwork around the door.